But I think that's when I first realized, like, oh, damn, like, there's a huge difference.
Shit is different.
You know what I mean? Like, he just changed his life. Me, it's changing my life, but not in that way.
High school graduates, straight to the league. I ain't waiting for my knee to blow. Yesterday I was needing this dough. Get it? I was needing this dough.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You grew up in Naperville, right? Right outside of Chicago. What was Naperville like? Give me a feel for it.
So I was born in St. Louis, and then
I didn't know that.
shortly, so I was like part of the St. Lunatics, and I was with the Chingy,
Air Force One,
all the Air Force
Chingy,
Ones, all that,
Yeah, exactly.
But we moved really early, so I claim St. Louis, but I'm not from there. But Naperville was rated when I was there one of the top 2 places in the country to raise kids.
Wow.
And so I was very fortunate to live in a community that had a great school, great public school system, sports activities.
Growing up, what did your parents do for a living?
So my dad worked in insurance for years, and my mom
Like a
stayed
sales
at home.
guy?
Yeah, stayed at home with us, and so we had a good situation. And obviously, I'm 11 years younger than my oldest brother, and Anthony, he went pro.
Anthony's in the middle?
Anthony's the oldest.
He's the oldest.
Yeah, Anthony's the oldest, and then Marcus is in the middle. And so, it was kind of funny because, you talked about Anthony played professional basketball for all those years. My middle brother's a doctor.
Wow.
And it's hilarious because people walk up and are like, what happened to you? It's like, dude, he's a doctor. Like,
yeah.
what are you talking about? And so it's just kind of like our parents really pushed us to do what we're passionate about. And us too, we loved basketball. And him, in high school, he decided that's what he wanted to do.
To be a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, did you guys talk about money and discuss what it was like to save money or invest money or things like that in the house?
So we had discussions about money, but I think when we really talked about it was when my brother got drafted and a lot was thrown at him, and it changed for our family and the way that we looked at success and how we could pursue life and money and be great at something. And I think that that's kind of when it changed.
For most hoopers, even myself who played college, you start 6 years old. I started playing. You didn't start playing till the 8th grade, but then you quickly became, really incredible. And then you became the first woman to announce your college on ESPN. What made you choose Tennessee?
Well, I feel like if I'm a doctor, my brother went to Johns Hopkins. He went to the best medical school, and I wanted to be a professional athlete. And so I wanted to play at a school that fought for women, that fought for equality. At the time we were there, we had 2 separate athletic departments. The best coach ever to me in Pat Summitt. And we had 20,000. I think my senior year, we averaged 16 or 17,000 people every game. And for me in college, that's what I want to play in front of.
Of course.
And there was just no better choice than going there and trying to compete for national championships.
Obviously, the legendary coach, Summitt, did she talk to you about, hey, after college, being a pro, what that all means when you're being recruited?
When you asked her questions and you went into her office, she would tell you. But if you just looked around at her hustle and how hard she worked, and she really didn't have to do anything other than coach.
Yep.
But she's doing speaking engagements. She spoke to the CIA when I was there. Countless fundraisers.
And she would tell you guys about these things?
Yes, and that's the thing, is the fact that as athletes, when we have these meetings with boosters and different events, it's relationships. So she would preach being able to have a relationship with somebody so that when something happens, if there's a business opportunity, you want your name to be the first thing that they think of.
Of course.
And you have to do that by establishing relationships, being confident in yourself. So I think she did it by an example. We talked about it a little bit, but more so just watching her.
And it's interesting because, to your point, a lot of it is like, well, they call you student athletes, which I obviously think is bullshit. But to see the coach gets to coach and go do other things, did you take that in any kind of way and think about that?
From a very young age, I was taught you have to be able to do a lot of different things well.
Oh, that's great.
And basketball has been so great to me. But you know what? I gotta be versatile. Just like I'm on the court, I gotta be off the court as well. I gotta be able to establish relationships. I gotta be able to maneuver a room. I gotta be able to, talk about business and be able to take care of my finances. And so I think that's kind of what I've learned through this entire process.
Has that been met with any resistance? Anyone like, Candace, you're doing too much. You need to be training, you're doing this, but you actually need to get back on the court and focus.
You know, it's funny because I think Instagram to me, Twitter brings out people's true thoughts for me. And I think it's something that you have to look at because that's really people being authentic in who they are because they're able to say whatever they want.
Yes.
And so, you know, obviously the back to the kitchen references, the make a sandwich references. There's a lot of people that think that women athletes shouldn't be out there being more than athletes.
Of course.
And I think there's some when they get personal, I have to address it.
Do you address it sometimes?
If you get personal, yes. But if it's a generalization, I think the thing that irritates me the most is you cannot fight for equality with your own agenda. That's not equality.
What do you mean? You mean
so
like...
if I'm, and there's a lot of African-American young males that are on Instagram and their profile picture is Black Lives Matter, and then you're commenting on me that I need to get back in the kitchen. It doesn't work that way. You can't have equality for one. Equality is equal. Like the word is in there.
It's derived from equal.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so I think that's the thing that I think disappoints me, and that's what makes me want to fight harder. I have a daughter. You know you have a daughter.
Yep.
And I don't want her to be born at a disadvantage just because she's a girl. I'm very honest with her. We have a lot of talks and conversations, but I think that the world is going to be better for her. I hope that that's what I'm doing right now is that she doesn't see the difference of being a little girl.
Obviously, you know, there's Title IX, which is supposed to bring equality amongst all the sports. Because we know in college, football brings the most. You know, I'm a big Ohio State fan, so football brings in a ton of money. And basketball, but then they're supposed to spread it out, and then Title IX is supposed to make sure it's even between men and women. But you went to a school where women's basketball was at the pinnacle. I mean, football's always at the pinnacle, especially in the SEC.
We played after the men during Midnight Madness.
Did you quickly realize, wait, I'm a they're making me like...
You know,
like
it's interesting.
Because Title IX is supposed to alleviate that.
I'm about to go like way back. So I was 18. I went to prom with Dwight Howard, actually.
I didn't know that.
Yes. So McDonald's All-American, National Player of the Year. He goes straight to the NBA, signed a deal. You know, obviously he was drafted by Orlando, signed a shoe deal, did all this stuff. I went to college, which is great. Tennessee was, but I think that's when I first realized like, oh, damn. Like, there's a huge difference.
Shit is different.
You know what I mean? Like, he just changed his life. Me, it's changing my life, but not in that way.
Do you remember when you went into the WNBA? Obviously, there's a pay equity thing. Do you actually remember when you got your first big check?
So I signed with Adidas out of college and got a house when I first moved to LA because I wanted to make this home. You know, that was kind of the first thing that I did was get a place to stay.
Female basketball players play in the WNBA, but you actually make more money if you go overseas to Russia or someplace like that. How does that work, and why is it that way?
Money is more of for an owner. Like, our owner was like the 4th richest man in Russia. And it really literally was like, our team was a talking point. Like, we won this many championships, like, bow, you know, put it on the table. And so I think it's less of like looking at it as like a financial gain over there. And we have sponsors and things like that really put a lot into the team. Overseas, to be able to have 6,000, 7,000 fans every night for a women's game was huge. Played in Ekaterinburg, and it's just better. I mean, the money is just better over there. And so I think initially when I first entered in the WNBA, I was like, I'm gonna change that.
You're gonna make the WNBA.
I'm gonna change that. Like, I'm gonna make the WNBA. Like, I'm gonna get paid over here so I don't have to go overseas. And then I had my daughter and I was like, well, I gotta start making financial decisions that are best. And it's hard to pass up that type of money.
You're raising a daughter and she's growing up much different than you did.
Much different.
So how do you view raising your daughter, and do you think about how you were raised versus how she's raised?
I think it is a balance because when I went to the store, and by no means were we poor by any means, but we did not live the way that my daughter lives right now.
Of course.
So when we went to the store and I said, hey, can I? It was no because we can't. when I go to the store with my daughter, it's no, because you just aren't gonna get that. Like,
And
you
does she
can't have
know
everything you want.
And she knows you can get it if she.
Exactly. And so I think it's just a balance of trying to teach that work ethic, because a lot of it, we're built with is that like desire to succeed.
Of course.
And it is a balance of trying to like give them the things that we maybe didn't have, but also still instill that work ethic and that desire to compete, and that life's not easy and things like that.
Since you were a rookie to now, would you have done anything different based off what you've now learned and know about overseas, WNBA, as you've navigated your pro career?
You know, the best advice I got was before you enter into stocks, make sure you have enough money in bonds first. You have that kind of protection.
Your nest egg, yeah.
Yeah, you have your nest. And I think that's kind of the same thing with me. Before I decided not to go overseas this year and focus on businesses, focus on relationships, focus on working at Turner and what's after basketball, you got to have that cushion.
Of course.
And that's what overseas did for years.
Just give you that cushion.
Give me that cushion to be able to maybe make great decisions that are going to be good for me later, but financially maybe might not make as much money for me right now.
Got it. And did you deal with friends, family, anyone come to you like, well, can I get this? Can you put me on? I'm capable of this.
Yes, and I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of my family, my coach, my brother, everybody had told me, that the older you get, the more you feel less guilty about saying no.
100%. LeBron always says the first time he told his mom no, he was like, everybody else was fucked. I learned how to tell my mom no. Everybody else is over with.
But that's the hardest thing, because you can. It goes back to like when you go to the grocery store, and I asked when I was a kid and it was like, no, sorry. But you're saying no when you can.
Yes.
But that's not smart.
Yes.
And so I think that's the hardest thing is like being able to balance that. But like as you get older and you get more comfortable, it's like that voice becomes stronger and stronger. Like it doesn't shake when you make decisions for yourself, because you're making it for your family and for your career.
What was the hardest time you had to say no to somebody, like, and you thought about it for days, like, damn, I didn't want to do that, but you had to set a precedent?
You know, you live in LA, and although I really do think I'm a fantastic person, I think LA attracts a lot of friends that want to come out here, and they have like chances to.
They want to turn your house into a hotel.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, my pool's nice, so they like to chill by the pool.
Of course.
It's not bigger than Ye's, but it's nice.
But let me tell you this: it's better than all the ones in Naperville. There's not many.
True.
I know. I'm from Ohio.
That's true.
Yes.
And it's nice weather all year round. So
exactly.
Being able to tell people like, listen, you can't. You got to find somebody else to stay. Like, you know what I mean? So I think it's just being able to stand on your own 2 feet and be like, I have a family. Like, I have a career. I'm focused on stuff. This isn't always playtime.
Exactly.
And I learned a lot from that, and my ability it's okay to put yourself first sometimes.
And has your opinion on like what you will and won't do endorsement-wise changed from when you were young and you were like,
100%.
how has it changed from when you were young to now?
I think it's sometimes seeing yourself as a business, as a brand, and understanding that just because the check is more right now, it'll help your brand to grow bigger. I mean, you talk about investments, you talk about maybe even with learning from Steph Curry with Under Armour,
yep.
like getting, you know what I mean? And within Under Armour, as opposed to taking a big salary from Nike, that was more than that. So it's just things like that you talk about information, paying attention to what's around you, and not necessarily just going for dollar signs, going with what makes the most sense.
Well, yeah, it's the oldest thing in the book. Is like when we were young and LeBron was just starting and I just started doing his job, it was always the question of like short-term money over what you think would be better long-term. But if you're betting on the long-term, you have to take a real hard look in the mirror and bet on yourself.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, it was twice for a lot of money. One time $120 million, another time a check from Reebok for $10 million. Well, LeBron made the decision that he wasn't going to take the money simply because on the other side of the money was him saying, literally, fuck that, I'm betting on myself. He always believed he was going to be LeBron as we know him today. And if he wavered on that in any little bit, then he would have did it. But that it's always the same thing. It's like, what's good for me in the long run if I'm gonna be Candace, or do I just take this money? You always have to, you're constantly measuring that as a business person.
That's the greatness within the greats, is you always have unwavering confidence in yourself and your ability to make decisions. And I think throughout the mistakes, you're learning from them as well. You know, there's been decisions that I've made that I've looked back and been like, you know, maybe I could have played one more year, or maybe I could have played a full season and I would have, you know, X in my bank account at this point in time. But you roll with it and you make the best of it. And you bet on yourself, like you said. My daughter is 10 years old right now.
Wow.
And I can't keep taking her to these foreign countries overseas. It's not helping. You know what I mean? She needs to be in school. She needs to be with her friends. She needs to have activities. And so I don't know if it's a sacrifice, because I think, like you said, I'm betting on myself and commentating. I'm betting on myself to be able to, you know, build the relationships and have the life post-career, in a career post-basketball. And so I think those are all things that are scary, but I've learned just from looking around. You look at LeBron, you look at Steph, you look at what KD's doing. You bet on yourself, you're usually right.
Exactly. If you're like yourself, if you're great like yourself. So you've now played 11. This is your 11th season.
This is my 12th,
this
but
is
it's
your
11 because it's like the summer.
Yeah,
you know.
This is your 12th, and you played 9 overseas, right? So how has your view from when you were first starting changed, as you talk about looking at your bank account, investing and saving money changed? Have you changed how you think about saving money versus investing it as you've now gotten older and longer into your career?
I majored in finance, and there was a class that I wasn't going to be able to take for 2 semesters, so I had to switch my major.
Wow.
But a lot of my electives, unfortunately, are finance classes, and so I understand, you know, money, but having to understand to surround yourself with people that are more knowledgeable than you are, and allows me to do what I do. And so I think for me, it was getting a base that I'm comfortable with, that I can take care of myself.
And how did you come up with what that base should be? Because as a youngster, you don't know.
You don't know.
You can know all you want about finance, but you're like, what should it be? I don't know.
I think you sit down with people that are more knowledgeable than you. Like my financial advisor basically sets goals. And then for you, like I just bought a car 3 years ago.
Really?
I was so cool with my Beamer. It wasn't, to me, I would rather have a house and be comfortable in my daughter, like in nice schools and things like that, than buy another car. And it was like, I was here half the year anyway, you know? So it was just being able to sacrifice things. Like for me, vacation and living in a nice home are the two.
Those are your two things?
Important things.
So is
Everything
vacation
else,
your guilty pleasure?
Vacation.
Me too, by the way.
I cannot, like the hotels. Yes.
I agree.
So
I'm the same way.
And
I'm not a car person at all, but
vacations and my house. Like I want where I go home to every night
to be
for
awesome.
myself to be, yeah.
So was the first thing you were saving for was to have that nest egg of money that you could then when you got there, did you feel comfortable like now I can go splurge a little bit or invest some?
You know, I sat down with my financial advisor and he explained to me that when you get to a certain point, it's not stocks and bonds that are going to make your bank. You know, it's having relationships with people that have made billions. Yeah. And it's sitting down and understanding how they handled their money.
And how old were you when you had to go through this company?
You know, honestly, my ex-husband handled a lot of our finances.
Got it.
You know, obviously I was in all the meetings and things like that, but the day-to-day things that needed to be done, he handled a lot of it. So I had a huge learning curve the last 4 years of really being heavily involved, really learning money market, learning my sitting down and talking and having a relationship with my investors, and just learning. Like, I think we want to go for the home run, and it's not about that. It's about being smart and saying no.
Saying no, absolutely. And do you see, as young women come into the WNBA and they're like navigating overseas and money and this, do you see them struggling sometimes with trying to understand all of this?
Well, your rookie season, I'll tell you, like, it's tough your rookie year. You know, you don't get paid. You're in college in April. You don't get paid till June 1st. Like, you're on per diem. Like, it's tough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think you think of yourself as this professional athlete, I'm gonna have all this money, but then it's just like hits you in the face. Like, you know, you don't have money to do things like that yet.
Exactly.
Like, you're not signing training camp contracts.
Of course.
Ahead of the NBA season. That's not how it works. And so you understand how important overseas is and how important relationships and also, endorsements and getting out there. But I think the main thing is too, when you're sitting down and you're filling out your paperwork and you're talking about 401k.
And taxes and all that stuff.
Taxes, and you're understanding that, like, all right, you make $50,000. You're not getting $50,000.
Exactly.
You are. Like, you're like, FICA, who's FICA? Like,
Exactly.
like, oh my gosh, who's that? I don't even like that person.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even, you know what I mean? And so I think it's understanding that you have to put into your 401k,
Yep.
that it's a no-brainer, that you put the max in if you're capable of it.
Yep.
So those are kind of the conversations that I've had with our rookies right now. And just in terms of overseas, making sure that, you put certain things in your contract overseas because they like to, go for loopholes over there.
So what was the hardest, as a young WNBA player, what was the hardest lesson for you to grab? Because you were not just a young, people always just see the basketball part, but they don't see all the off-the-court things that you have to deal with as a youngster of taxes, investments, saving that nest egg, what that meant to ensure that later you could live the same lifestyle. What was the hardest part of that financial burden that you had to grasp, whether it was as a youngster or as you said later, because Shell handled a lot of your ex-husband handled a lot of it?
A lot of what was hard for me to grasp was like after year 3, when I had signed all these contracts and had made all this money, but then you look in the bank and it's not because you got agent fees.
Oh, yeah.
You got, obviously marketing fees. You got, taxes, you putting in for your 401k. So it was like, but I made this, so I should have
How do I not? This is
more.
off.
Exactly.
Something's off.
And so I think it's really sitting down and understanding. I think that's the biggest thing. Right now, you talk about information. Information's at our fingertips for what we want. Like, we understand what happened on media takeout. We understand what happened yesterday in the NBA game when so-and-so didn't like so-and-so. We can Google that and we Google those stories. Google about money. Google about saving. Google all this information is out there. And you have the ability and access to have it and to figure it out yourself.
Exactly. And was there any mistake that you made, either as a rookie or later when you had to take it over once you got divorced? Was there any mistake that you wish you could go back and change? Or that you learned a lot from?
I think I won't say a mistake, but I think, like you said when you spoke earlier about taking quick cash.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing. It's right there. It's like,
oh, and it's easy. I just got to take one appearance. Oh, I get that.
Exactly. But does it grow who you are? Does it put you in the room with people that you need to be in?
Yep.
Does it grow you as a business person?
Yep.
And I think that's the biggest thing is in shaping who you are. If you want to be authentic, sometimes it's no. And so I think that's the biggest thing for me is just looking back. I wish that I would have thought more long term because it's hard when you're 22, 23 years old.
Very hard.
Like you're like, man, 30, 35 is so long away. Like it's so far away. And then I'll look up and it's 2 years away.
Yep.
And so, it's understanding that, building your brand is way more important than taking quick cash.
Exactly. When you're done playing, whenever that is, whenever you decide, what is the dream? What do you want to do? And has that dream changed, and what is it today?
So I'm really big on heroes, and basically if you want to be something, if you look hard enough, you'll find it, and you'll find the equation to how to be that. And I'm in LA, so obviously I've watched Magic Johnson grow his empire.
Of course.
And, I've watched people like a Robin Roberts and Michael Strahan hustle and grind and get to where they're at. And so for me, it's those three that I look to as, I want to be a businesswoman after the fact. Launching a production company now, just trying to think farther ahead.
Yep.
Like you guys.
Thank you.
Honestly, no, for real. And it's just honestly doing things because I don't know if there's, aside from what Serena is doing now, I want women in sports to have something after basketball. I don't want people at the airport to come up and be like, you're an athlete, right? I want to be like, no, I'm an author, I'm a businesswoman, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm this, I'm that. I want to be all of those things. And so I think that's what makes me wake up every day and want to hustle.
I think you're gonna do it.